With the situation around Ukraine heating up, and more people talking about it, I thought I might jump on the wagon and talk about their tanks, or rather compare them. Now, if I talked about every single tank each of them has, this video would be an hour long. Instead, I would rather compare the tanks that are potentially most likely to face off against each other. You can play as either Ukraine or Russia in the Conflict of Nations. Conflict of Nations is a free online PvP strategy game. Choose a real country to lead in modern global warfare and fight up to 128 other players in real time in games that can take weeks to complete. Use many different units to build your army, declare war to your neighbors, or forge alliances with other players. Choose your own strategy, engage in epic battles to take over the world. One thing I like about the game is that it is a long-term real-time strategy game. A great thing is that you can play on the same account on both PC and mobile. Click on the link in the description to get an exclusive gift. 13,000 gold and 1 month of premium subscription for free. The offer is available for only 30 days, don't lose time. For Ukraine, I decided to take a look at their most common tanks, which include T-64BV, T-64BV model 2017, T-80BV and T-80BV model 2017, and compare them against Russian tanks that, based on the available footage, are the most common tanks placed in the areas close to the border. Those include T-72B3, T-72B3 model 2016, also known as T-72B3 UBH, aka T-72B3M, T-80BVM and T-80U. If this video does good, I will compare the rest of their tanks in another video, which include T-64BM1, T-64BM2, T-84 Uplot, BM Uplot, T-72AMT, T-72B for Ukraine, and T-90, T-90A, T-90M, T-72B, T-72BA, T-72B Model 1989, and T-80UE1 for Russia. Yeah, you see why I can't do all of them in one video. First, let me get something out of the way. Ukraine has failed to develop any new APF-SDS projectile and are stuck using old Soviet ammunition, best of which is 3BM42 Mango, but in a full-scale war, they probably wouldn't have enough to supply all tanks with this projectile and may resort to using even older projectiles such as 3BM26, 3BM22 or 3BM32. Russia has developed new 3BM59 and 3BM60 APF-SDS projectiles, but it is unknown in what numbers they have them, but they do have a lot of 3BM42 Mangos. Now that we got that out of the way, let's first take a look at the Ukrainian T-64BV, which is by far the most common tank in the Ukrainian army. The main problem with this tank is that it is old, very old. The tank originally came out in 1985, as a further upgrade of T-64B tank from 1976. Main difference being a slight upgrade to the hull armor and installation of Contact 1 explosive reactive armor, which only affects non-tandem hollow charge munitions. Now, it is very much possible that regular T-64Bs from 1976 have been upgraded with Contact 1 ERA, but it is impossible to tell OG T-64BV and upgraded T-64B apart, because of how similar they are. And against Russia, honestly, it doesn't really matter. The point I'm trying to make here is that the tank is pretty much a 1976 tank with ERA slapped on top. This means that the tank is very much obsolete. It has no thermal sights, only old first or second generation night vision sights. It does have automatic lead, which is something helpful, but that is about it. The armor is not great either. 3BM42 Mango most likely can pierce through it, and not to mention the new Russian 3BM60 and 3BM59 projectiles. The mobility is pretty poor too. It is powered by a 700 horsepower opposed piston diesel engine, which is horrible, since the tank weighs 42.5 tons, that would put the power to weight ratio to 16.5 horsepower per ton, which is not great at all. You will see why when we get to the other tanks. So, all in all, the tank is old, has insufficient firepower, protection and mobility to deal with the modern Russian tanks, and it's not really good. You may have noticed I haven't talked about the ammo penetration. Well, it is not that much relevant. Projectiles like 3BM42 are specifically designed to deal with composite armors. Their raw steel penetration is not much relevant, and not to mention the fact that a lot of explosive reactive armor is also involved into the equation. The raw penetration, as I said, is pretty much irrelevant. Its upgraded cousin, on the other hand, does have some potential. The T-64BV model 2017, unlike regular T-64BV, has thermal for the gunner, which is a massive plus. Now, I couldn't find information if it has automatic target tracking, but on the other hand, it also received a global positioning system, which is really nice. It has also supposedly received NOJ explosive reactive armor inserts in the Contact 1 blocks. NOJ, unlike Contact 1, also affects APF-SDS projectiles. That would protect it on the front from projectiles like 3BM42 for sure, but about 3BM59 and 3BM60 I'm not so certain, but we really don't have any info on how NOJ would deal with such projectiles. On the downside though, mobility is still very poor. It is completely unknown how many T-64BV tanks Ukraine has operational. They have lost dozens of them to enemy fire since the war started. Some have also been captured, and a bunch of other things that could happen to them probably happened to them, so it is completely impossible to tell. On the other hand, we do have information on the T-64BV model 2017. At least 162 of T-64s have been upgraded to this standard, but I'm not sure if some of them were sent to combat or not. Now, what about T-72B3? How does it compare? Well, for starters, for being the most common tank in Russian service, it has thermal sight for the gunner and Contact 5 explosive reactive armor, which affects both APF-SDS and hollow charge projectiles. The main gun sight also has the automatic target tracking, which is a big plus. On top of having decent ERA, the base armor is also better than that of the T-64BV, since it has better composite armor in form of reflective plates, which is actual non-explosive reactive armor or NERA, unlike T-64's simple sandwiched composites. It is also a bit more mobile. It is powered by an 840 horsepower diesel engine and weighs 46 tons, giving it around 18.3 horsepower per ton power-to-weight ratio. But regular T-72B3 is not that common in the border areas, at least according to available footage. Most that I have seen have been upgraded T-72B3 2016 models. This tank has received upgrades to the side armor with installation of relic side skirts. The frontal armor is still covered in Contact 5 and not relict, as some media articles wrote. The turret sides also received additional ERA protection. Another upgrade is a new 1130 horsepower diesel engine, making the tank much faster. Even though the tank now weighs around 47 tons, its power-to-weight ratio still increased to 24 horsepower per ton. Now compare that to T-64's 16.5 horsepower per ton. Ukraine also operates with a much smaller number of T-80BV tanks, but it is still relevant. Regular T-80BV is not much different than T-64BV, similar fire control system and similar protection, but it is much more mobile. It is powered by a 1100 horsepower gas turbine engine, and since the tank weighs 43 tons, that puts the power-to-weight ratio at 25.5 horsepower per ton. Another important difference is the reverse speed. Both T-64 and T-72 tanks have a reverse speed of 4 to 5 km per hour, which is really bad. T-80 on the other hand has 10 to 11 km per hour reverse speed, which isn't great, but it's certainly decent, and with the high acceleration of the gas turbine, it can be very useful to have such reverse speed in some situations. And just like T-64BV model 2017, T-80BV model 2017 features the same upgrades: thermal sight, GPS, and NOJ ERA. It should be mentioned that a lot of those T-80s are upgraded T-80B tanks that had their hull armor upgrade with additional steel plate back in the 80s. Against Russia, it does not make that much of a difference, but again should be mentioned. Oh, and also, even those upgraded T-80s received steel bolted on the rubber side skirts when upgraded to T-80BV standards, looking at you, Gaijin. In total, 88 T-80s have been upgraded to T-80BV model 2017 standard. Now, the Russian T-80BVM is similar, but also different. It has the same main gun sight as T-72B3, which means thermal plus automatic target tracking. Another important difference is that it is equipped with relict explosive reactive armor, which is really good, but not like it matters that much against Ukraine since they don't have any modern APF-SDS projectile. But unlike the Ukrainian T-80s, this one is powered by a 1250 horsepower gas turbine engine, but its weight increased to 46 tons because of the heavier explosive reactive armor. So its power-to-weight ratio is around 27 horsepower per ton, which is still higher than the Ukrainian tank. Now we come to the last Russian tank, the T-80U. Unlike T-80BVM, it has no thermals, and it is covered in Contact 5 ERA and not relict, but its base armor is much better, therefore it is not that much of a problem when facing Ukrainian tanks. One positive thing about it is that unlike any of the previously mentioned tanks, it has a fully stabilized commander's sight, and just like every other tank we looked at, the commander does not have thermals for the sight. It is powered by the same engine as T-80BVM and weighs the same, so it has the same 27 horsepower per ton power to weight ratio. If coupled with vehicles with thermals that could maybe spot targets for it, it could still prove to be a decent tank, but if not, I'm afraid it falls behind other Russian tanks. Now, Russia does operate a small number of T-80UM tanks, which do have thermal sight for the gunner. In the available footage, it is hard to see if such tanks have been deployed. If they were deployed, then they are pretty good if you want to deal with Ukrainian T-64BV tanks. That is all when it comes to these tanks. In conclusion, the most common Ukrainian tank stands very little to no chance to deal with Russian tanks. Same goes for regular T-80BV tanks. Their upgraded cousins do stand a much higher chance, having better protection and access to thermal sights. They could go toe-to-toe with Russian tanks. Unless the tanks they are facing are firing more potent ammunition, in which case it's probably safe to say that Russians stand a better chance. But the biggest issue is that, even though the numbers of those upgraded tanks is not that small, it is still not enough to stand up to the massive amount of Russian tanks, which are all either on par or better than them. Of course, Russians will also have to deal with a bunch of AT weapons, but that is not the topic of this video. That would be all. If you like my content, you can consider supporting me on Patreon. Leaving a like or subscribing also helps a lot. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Have a nice day. Conflict of Nations is a free online PvP strategy game, happening in a modern global warfare. Click on the link in the description to get an exclusive gift, 13,000 gold and 1 month of premium subscription for free. The offer is only available for 30 days, so don't lose time.